Hello, my name is Sammy, and for my research proposal, I want to look at the difference between the stated ethics and values of LIST professionals in the United States and the actual way that we handle artifacts and information specific to Indigenous people. Both the American Library Association and the Society of American Archivists discuss equity and diversity as being important on their web pages. However, it is evident that LIST institutions and professionals are not necessarily innocent with respect to the way that we have treated Indigenous people and their cultures. There is an important law to note called NAGPRA, which is the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. It was passed in 1990, and it protects some things like human remains and sacred objects, but it doesn't necessarily protect everything that Indigenous nations might be looking to have safeguarded. So the core issue I'm interested in is how we can respect Indigenous folks correctly according to their own ways of knowing and being. I want to know how the occupation of Indigenous peoples' archival materials in the United States affects the well-being of their communities. My identity in relationship to my participants is kind of a difficult one to consider. I'm 26 years old. I am white. There are lots of other pieces to me. I am mentally disabled. I have autism and ADHD. I have been affected by post-traumatic stress disorder. I outwardly am visibly queer to many people. Whether they know that I am bisexual or just sense that something is different about me, I'm not privy to what others are necessarily thinking. And I think that also being transsexual changes the way that I interact with others. And I will say that I use the word transsexual to indicate that I have taken medical measures to change my body, because taking those steps medically has put me in a different type of danger than trans people who do not take those steps medically. Ultimately, what I think puts me in my place in this position is my whiteness, and knowing that the whiteness that I have is devoid of any type of culture. So I'm not speaking a different language in the home with my family, like Polish or German. I don't have connection to like a motherland. That doesn't exist for me. And so the best connection to a culture that I have is actually my connection to queer culture. That being said, to quote Kim England from her 1994 article, all the sympathy in the world is not going to enable me to truly understand what it is like, in this case, for Indigenous folks. So, the truth is that I agree with England in the sense that I'm not sure I can be as ethical as I strive to be, because research makes the researcher and the participants inherently unequal. I do not want to appropriate Native voices, and I think the best way to avoid appropriation is for me to keep a daily journal reflecting on my motives and feelings with regard to the research. If I can steer clear of adopting a white savior complex or stereotyping the participants as typical wise Indians, that would be as close to perfect as I could hope for in this situation. I do think that I can share my participants' voices through data presentation or verbatim quotes without being a domineering force and without setting them up for ridicule. The nature of colonialism is so that the majority, like me, are raised to either hate or pity the minority, like Native folks. There's no reason that I should be anything other than a conduit for the voices of my participants. And at my grandest ambition, this study is going to be a small pebble that contributes to the stepping stones of the land back movement. I want Indigenous leaders to share their knowledge, um, and I want to synthesize what they say and deliver the results to LIST institutions to hopefully affect change in our collection and repatriation practices. My desire is that Indigenous leaders will have a chance to share something important with the powers that be without risking any data about their nations or getting wounded in the inevitable pushback from fragile white leaders.